Welcome, pool guys and gals, to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast, where your host, Lauren Broom, will take a splash into many topics in the pool industry to educate all aquatic professionals. Listen in, and you just might be surprised what you'll learn. So let's jump right in.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. This is Lauren Broom, your host, and today I'll be interviewing Dr. Bill Kent on legislation in Florida to help with drowning prevention in the state of Florida for those children where the highest risk of drowning and death happens. Leading cause of death, ages 1 to 4, is drowning. So it did get approved. It got combined in the Department of Education bill. It will now have the school districts, when a child is entering kindergarten, the parent being asked if their child knows how to swim or not. And if they answer no, then the school district will provide local information to them where they can get local swim lessons for their child. It's a conversation piece and it gets parents to talk. So listen into this episode. It's very exciting. We'll talk about the International Hall of Fame, some of the famous people Dr. Kent has seen at the facility, and a little bit of other odds and ends in regards to drowning prevention. So hope you enjoy this episode. And I want to say thank you to both of my sponsors of the podcast episode today, which is CameraEye and Skimmer. Thank you so much.
Hi, don't lose peace of mind over the safety of your beautiful pool. Introducing CameraEye, the fastest artificial intelligent pool safety system. CameraEye uses artificial intelligence to create a virtual smart fence around your pool to help save lives. Monitor your pool 24/7 from your home or anywhere on your phone. CameraEye detects when someone crosses the AI smart fence through overhead cameras. If there is distress or near drowning behavior in the pool, alerts and alarms notify you through the Smart Hub, siren, phone, and app within 10 seconds. Affordable and easy to install. Keep a CameraEye on your pool for 24/7 peace of mind. To learn more, visit www.camereye.ai.
Welcome everybody today to Let's Talk About Pools. And on my episode today, my guest is Bill Kent with Corner Express. Welcome, Bill. How are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Happy to be here as a guest.
I'm thankful to have you here today as well. And tell the audience a little bit about yourself in case they don't know who you are.
Whew, well, that'll take a while. I'm a past president of the Florida Swimming Pool Association. I'm a past president of the National Trade Association. I'm currently the chairman of the board of the International Swimming Hall of Fame, based, as you know, here in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm still the CEO of our company, even though a little less than 5 years ago, I sold the company to the employees. It's called an Employee Stock Ownership Plan, or ESOP for short. And one of my main missions in my role as the chairman of the board of the International Swimming Hall of Fame has to do with the original spiritual mission that the founding fathers of the Swimming Hall of Fame identified in 1965 when they created the organization. And that mission is called Every Child a Swimmer.
Awesome. And that's what we're going to be talking about mostly today on this episode. So tell me about your involvement in Florida regarding that legislative bill, Every Child a Swimmer.
Well, that all came from a conversation around 2 years ago with Cassie McGovern, who's one of the local people here in Broward County for drowning prevention. Somebody during a conversation on the phone gave me what I call a great idea. And that little seed has now developed into a program to try to have the state of Florida add into the process for a child entering kindergarten a question of the parents. And the question is very simple. Have you taught your child to swim? And while that isn't the goal is that every child be a swimmer, it at least gets it on the radar screen for the parents if they had not already thought about it. And I've had nothing but positive responses to it. But the reality of getting anything through the Florida legislature is way more complicated than just having a good idea.
Yes, it is.
So for the last 2 years, I've been going in baby steps towards that. And earlier this week, thanks to a government relations Zoom meeting last week between the Palm Beach and Broward chapters of the Trade Association, one of the senators came back to me 2 days ago and said, we would like to submit for drafting in the legislature your bill. And of course, I said, that's fabulous. And so that's actually happening as we speak.
That's awesome. So that's the current news right now on the bill.
That's the big news.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for letting our audience know that. So what inspired you to promote this bill and the initiative for it?
Well, first of all, every organization needs a spiritual mission. If you want to have an organization that's vibrant and positive in its culture and in its accomplishments, you need a spiritual mission. I've always believed in that. Our company has one here called Working Together, Growing Together, and Winning Together.
It's beautiful.
That encompasses our relationship with both our customers, of course, but also with our suppliers. We want them to be winners as well. And so that's kind of the background. We believe at the Hall of Fame that it's a parental responsibility to teach your child to swim. Swimming is different than any other sport. In other words, if you can't play tennis or you can't play baseball or basketball or soccer or whatever sport you choose, it won't kill you. However, that's not true of swimming. If you can't swim, it can kill you. And that's the difference. And it's a unique difference that the bodies of water hold for us. It can either be something that we love, embrace, and gain benefit from, or it can be something that can kill us. In fact, I have an interesting story that I used at that World Aquatic Health Conference. If you'd like, I'll tell that story for you.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So there was once a professor who wanted to go down the river. So he approached a local boatman who agreed to row him downstream for a small sum of money. As they made their way downstream, the professor decided to show off how intelligent and how highly educated he was. So he decided to test the boatman. Taking up a stone he picked from the riverbank, the professor asked the boatman, "Have you ever studied geology?" The boatman looked at him and said, "No," hardly even understanding what the word meant. The professor then said, "I'm afraid 25% of your life is gone." The professor loftily boasted. The boatman, of course, he's feeling really bad about his ignorance and continues to row on. As they move further downstream, the river currents begin to get stronger and stronger. The professor picks up a leaf and asks condescendingly, "Mr. Boatman, have you studied botany?" Confused, the boatman again had to say, "No." The professor again shakes his head and says, 50% of your life is gone. He then signals him to carry on rowing. As they move downstream, the currents get even stronger and stronger. The water is moving faster, and the boat is beginning to sway violently. Suddenly, the professor sees a mountain range, points at it, and asks the boatman, "Have you studied geography?" Feeling inferior and humiliated, the boatman says, "Well, no." The professor snaps back and says, "I thought so. Then 75% of your life is gone." At this point, the river became a raging torrent. The water is moving so strongly that the boatman loses control of the boat and it smashes against the rocks and springs a leak. It begins to sink. This time the boatman turns to the professor and asks, "Professor, do you know how to swim?" To which the professor answers, "No." "Then I'm afraid 100% of your life is gone." And he leaps off the boat and powers his way to shore. So that's my story about the need to know how to swim, because you really don't know as you weave your way through the life cycle if and when you'll ever need that ability to swim. But it's kind of like riding a bike. Once you've learned to swim, you do not forget it.
I thank you very much. That it relates the need to learn how to swim for our children, for adult people, in such a way with a story that people can relate to. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So you, as you stated before, you are the chairman of the International Swimming Pool Hall of Fame in Fort Lauderdale. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means a lot of work. I've been on the board. I'll tell you how I got involved in the Swimming Hall of Fame. I'm from the swimming pool industry, as you know, Lauren. And the swimming pool industry kind of operates on a parallel path with the world of aquatics. So I have a tendency to think of all of those people who are in aquatics as user groups for our product. And I got into the swimming pool industry at the beginning. I started a different career on January the 1st, 1970, believe it or not. And I know I don't look that old, but that's the story. and I fell in love within the first 6 months. I went out and saw one of our pools. I was with a manufacturing company that built aluminum pools. This is back in Ohio, where I'm originally, in Cincinnati, where I'm originally from. And the first time I ever went out and saw a bunch of kids swimming in one of our pools, I was thrilled, just plain thrilled. And even today, 50 years later, I'm still thrilled by what I know are the results of all of our work in the swimming pool industry.
Yeah.
Because we're the organizations that build the pools, service the pools, renovate the pools, and all of that stuff. And that's quite different from the world of aquatics people, where they are basically all user groups, in my mind. If you think about the world of aquatics from the 50,000 foot level, there's the user groups, there's the providers, there's the supporters, and then there's the casual non-users. And each one of us plays a role in that world of aquatics. The Swimming Hall of Fame actually started as a second generation swimming pool project, first built and then operated by the city of Fort Lauderdale. Back in 1929, there was a pool that was built literally right across from the beach called the Casino Pool. And that pool lasted until the mid-60s, from 1929, and then had to be replaced. And that's when the Hall of Fame pools that everybody is familiar with were built. The Casino Pool was a huge attraction. There were all kinds of water shows and all that sort of thing that went on in the 30s. So there became a tradition that for the user groups, again, the world of aquatics people, Fort Lauderdale became a common destination because of our year-round weather for the people who live up north. So in 1965, they built the first 50-meter pool on a peninsula that was actually built out into the Intercoastal Waterway here in Fort Lauderdale. And they also built a diving well and stands and all that. Well, as time rolled on, everything has a life cycle, and so those pools got old, and so we're currently shut down. The facilities are shut down. The pool facilities are shut down right now because there's a new 50-meter pool being built along with a new diving well. And interestingly enough, at the last minute, in addition to the standard diving tower up to 10 meters, there will be a 27-meter tower for high diving. That's 92 feet above water level. Because because it seems there's a demand for TV interest, Olympics and all that. There's a demand for high diving, and currently the only other high diving facility in the world is located in China, and so we are building one here, which will complement the brand new diving pool, the new 50-meter pool, and then there's a second 50-meter pool that's used for warm-ups during meets, and because that was built around 1890.
Well, that's exciting. That's exciting news for the Hall of Fame down there.
Right. And there's a proposal floating that will also include tearing down the two buildings that we occupy and building new state-of-the-art facilities there. And I do have pictures of all that if you wanted to upload them, but we haven't discussed that. So I'll just move on to how this whole thing started. For me personally, in 1990, actually 1989, one of the founders and pioneers of the modern swimming pool industry, again, where I live, his name was Bob Hoffman. He was one of the two co-publishers of one of the national trade magazines for the pool industry called Swimming Pool Age. Well, Bob lived about 5 miles from our office, and one day he called me and he said, have you ever been to the Hall of Fame? And I said, no. He said, well, there's a big meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'd like to have you come. I've been representing the swimming pool industry for a couple of decades, and I'm getting old, and so I need somebody that's younger to come down and see if you're interested in being involved in the Hall of Fame.
Sounds like you got recruited. It sounds like you got recruited.
I got recruited. I had already been very active in the National Trade Association and the technical committee that wrote all the national standards. I had been involved in that for a long time. And I kind of knew all of the players in our world on the pool industry side of things. Well, I walked into a room with about 50 people in it with Bob Hoffman, and I didn't know a soul. And it really, wow, I didn't know a single person in the room. And so that shocked me. And that's when I first started to understand that our swimming pool industry is parallel to the world of aquatics. And then I learned about Every Child a Swimmer, because back then, the actual founder of Every Child a Swimmer was one of the men who actually founded the Swimming Hall of Fame here in Fort Lauderdale in 1965. He was a local judge. His name was G. Harold Martin. And when I met him in 1989, he was probably in his late 80s, around 88 or 89 years old. And after talking to him for 5 minutes, I knew what he was all about, because he must have used the words Every Child a Swimmer about 10 times in the first 5 minutes. Well, things moved very rapidly, and all of a sudden I became a board member of the Swimming Hall of Fame. And within a couple of months, I was the treasurer for the Swimming Hall of Fame, because business is my game. That's what my doctorate's in, and is in global business. And so I'm pretty good when it comes to reading financial statements and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, and so I shortly became the treasurer for the Swimming Hall of Fame. Judge Martin was, of course, on the board, and he was one of those magical characters. So I always tried to sit next to him at a board meeting. And and every time I did, and this lasted for like 2 or 3 years, every time I did, all I ever heard about from Judge Martin was every child should learn to swim. And he told me his story about he almost drowned 3 times and before he was 20 years old. And anyway, he was a passionate man and inspirational to me. And but being the treasurer is kind of a backseat position. I had never really planned, because I'm, again, not from the world of aquatics, and the Hall of Fame is all about aquatics. I never really planned on becoming chairman of the board, because that brings obligations with it.
Yeah.
But because I've continued to stay active in the trade association here in Florida, and at some levels in the national, and then of course there was the National Swimming Pool Foundation with the Certified Pool Operator Program, and I was on that board for 20 years, or longer than that actually. And so anyway, when I became chairman of the board of the Hall of Fame 3 years ago, suddenly I felt the obligation to do something about every child a swimmer, because frankly, it had fallen on hard times at the Hall of Fame. And so since then... You were
inspired. You were inspired by the judge years ago.
Lauren, exactly right. He was unforgettable. And
it's once in a lifetime that you get to meet somebody like that that's inspiring like that.
You're absolutely right. There's only been a handful of people in my life that have had that kind of an impact on me, but Judge Martin was one of them. He was an unbelievably inspirational man. And he did die at like 92 or 93 years old a few years later, but I never forgot it. So anyway.
I think the inspiration that he gave the people is why he lived so long. Usually, you got something like that keeps you alive and passionate. It keeps you going a while.
Right. So that's what I'm hoping for myself. At 78.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this short intermission to hear from our co-sponsor of the podcast today. I want to say thank you, Skimmer, for being a co-sponsor of the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. Enjoy the rest of the podcast, guys.
This is Skimmer, software for the modern pool professional. What can you do with Skimmer? See all your customers on a map, build service routes quickly, and let Skimmer optimize them for you. Access customer information, including contact details and full service history, anytime and anywhere. Customize work orders to track jobs like repairs and filter cleanings. Email your customers when you complete a service. You can include service details and on-site photos. Does your customer need a part? Add it to the shopping list and track it from purchase to installation. Skimmer will even remind you what parts you need for the day, and you can mark them as installed right when you're finished. Skimmer doesn't just store your service history. It helps you get paid. We integrate with QuickBooks Online for fast, easy invoicing. And we've got more billing options coming soon. All that's just the beginning. Go to getskimmer.com to watch our demo video, check out our online tutorials, and see if Skimmer is right for you.
So this is just for fun for our audience listening. Doesn't have anything to do with swim lessons, but what significant people have you met at the Hall of Fame or have been at the Hall of Fame that you know of?
Pretty much every one of the Olympic heroes that you've heard of, from Michael Phelps to Greg Louganis to Mark Spitz to, Mark Spitz was actually chairman of the board for a couple of years at the Hall of Fame. So Donna Di Verona was the chairman of the board prior to myself. And then when Bruce Wygo, who had been the head of U.S. water polo, became chairman of the board in around the 2000 or 2001, I think, he inspired me to come back because I had left the board in the late 90s for a while. But pretty much everybody that you can think of, Rowdy Gaines, who lives in Orlando and has helped the Orlando chapter of the Trade Association with their Learn to Swim program up there, which I'm very happy about. So pretty much anybody that's an Olympic person that gets inducted into the Hall of Fame comes to the honoree ceremonies. And there's a lot of people from literally all over the world who have been inducted. Water polo, there's the four basic disciplines of aquatics. So it's a kind of a fun thing. They're all just passionate users of swimming pools. They spend their lives in pool water. So that's kind of interesting for me because most of the time I've never, frankly, in the now 30 years from the beginning of my activity at the Hall of Fame, I've never met one of our customers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, our pool industry people, as I said,
yeah,
we run in an industry parallel to the world of aquatics people.
So it's user groups versus the people that are servicing pools or purchasing chemicals or anything like that. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And frankly, the reason that I was inspired to become the president of the National Trade Association, back then it was called the National Spa and Pool Institute or National Swimming Pool Institute, different periods. was in 1995. I had been in the Hall of Fame for 5 years, and I had realized that there is this great need for the two industries to collaborate with each other because the pool industry has strengths and the world of aquatics has strengths, and together 1 + 1 would equal 3. So I ran for national office solely with the mission of trying to get the pool industry people involved with aquatics people around the United States. I'm talking about because all of the trade association activities are based on local chapters. And so in every local chapter has high schools and swim clubs and all that sort of thing. So there would have been an opportunity to collaborate with that. And frankly, I'm still working on that 15 years later. I haven't been very successful, except here in Florida. The Every Child a Swimmer program, as it's been re-energized in the last couple of years, has picked up some mojo here. And I'm excited because I've got 2 of the 16 chapters now have active programs here in Broward and in Central Florida. We have, in fact, in Central Florida, they've just recently, in the last couple of months, taught over 100 kids to swim with scholarship money.
Wow, that's awesome.
In other words, there's a whole lot of people who are going to learn to swim anyway, but what we're really targeting with this program is people who, for one reason or another, economically can't afford swim lessons. So we're giving scholarships to families that can't afford it to have their children learn to swim.
Because what is the leading cause of death for children's ages 0 to 4?
Lauren, you already know the answer to that question.
Yes, I do.
And it's a sad fact. I prefer to focus on the positive side of the benefits of swimming and all that. I do collaborate with those people who are involved in the drowning, what we call the drowning prevention groups. And I have been supportive of them, but at the same time, there's it's a better story if you just talk about all the benefits of learning to swim. In fact, that brings up something else that I used in that World Aquatic Health Conference program. If you want, I can briefly tell you that the National Swimming Pool Foundation about 15 years ago or 10, 12 years ago had found a researcher named Dr. Stephen Blair. He's at the University of South Carolina. And he took data that had been generated over a 40-year period between 1970 and 2005, 35 years, sorry, 40,000 participants. There's an institute called the Cooper Institute in Dallas that had started measuring mortality rates and doing risk analysis. And basically they focused on 4 lifestyles: a sedentary lifestyle, people who run, people who walk, and people who swim. And of course, those are all what I call regular users. And in other words, if you're sedentary, and there's a whole lot of people who really don't have any form of exercise as a habit in their life, that just means that they don't do anything, biking or racket sports or swimming or anything. And then there's the walkers, runners, and swimmers. And statistically, this research that Dr. Blair did was able to prove that the mortality, the risk of dying was more than double for a sedentary person than a swimmer. And then even for a walker, we did better. And a runner, we actually did better too. So swimming, as it turns out, was the best form of exercise for avoiding premature death. And that's a research paper that got third party reviewed. And so
that speaks a lot for the swimming pool industry right there.
It speaks a lot for people not only knowing how to swim, but actually swimming.
Right. They're going to live a longer, more fulfilling life if they're actually swimming.
Yeah. And that's a big part of what drives me, actually. So.
So I know Every Child a Swimmer is based in Florida. So with the whole goal of it is, I know you're trying to hone into the counties. There's certain counties in Florida that have higher drowning risks. What are some of those counties that have the highest drowning statistics in Florida?
Well, I don't know the counties by name, but what I do know is that the higher the population of pools, there was some research that was done by the Department of Health about 25 years ago, believe it or not, 25 years ago. And it seems like the drowning rate drops when there's more pools. Now, that's kind of counterintuitive, but it also makes sense, because people who own pools typically will make sure that they know how to swim and that everybody in the household knows how to swim. It also creates, the issue for very young children in that 0 to 4 category. Statistically, it creates an increased opportunity. But at the same time, in general, from an overall standpoint, fewer people drown when there's more pools around. So that actually kind of makes sense when you think about it. The amount of time that someone spends in their home also matters. COVID has had a side effect of doubling the rate of child drowning, according to my friends in the drowning prevention community.
That's what my understanding is from a presentation that I had seen that was presented recently, based on data just from March through, I think it was about August. So it was a very small statistical analysis from the Department of Health that their drowning rates had gone up and they theorize it could be because of COVID, because people are home more. So that has totally affected our statistics right now. I totally agree that it's a unique thing this year that we normally don't deal with.
By the way, one little side note, since we're talking about swimming and drowning, the definition of swimming is not something where you have to swim across a 50-meter pool. I got this from Bruce Wygo, who's now our historian at the Hall of Fame. The definition of swimming is to be as comfortable and move as easily in deep water as on land. In other words, fear is really what causes most people to drown. They panic when they get in the water because they don't know how to manage themselves. So swimming is just being as comfortable and being able to move as easily in deep waters on land. Makes a lot of sense from a definition standpoint. In other words, if you can't swim across a 20 or 25 meter pool, you can still be a swimmer. We don't have, there's a difference between just the basic skill set and getting involved in competitive aquatics and all the things that come with that.
Right. So what we're saying is it's the difference between competitive swimming and just recreational swimming in your backyard pool, where you just kind of swim in a small area. It doesn't always have to be defined as a lap pool with lap lanes or a diving well or anything like that, just so our audience understands what we're talking about.
Well, it's kind of interesting, Lauren, that one of the negative things about the Swimming Hall of Fame in terms of its general presence in the community, and I'm talking about the aquatics community, is people who are outside of competitive aquatics. All the Olympics are the ones that get 90% of the high-profile media, but there's a whole bunch of other swim clubs in high schools and colleges and all the rest of it. So that's what gets all the attention in the media. And virtually everybody that I've ever served with at the Swimming Hall of Fame thinks that in many ways that's a distraction and a kind of a negative, because really aquatics is about just knowing how to swim. In other words, not being fearful in water that's deeper than your head. So that's kind of an interesting.
That's very interesting, Bill. Yeah.
So it's a basic life skill. In other words, that's the key. And we know that it's a happy, healthy form of family fun. We know that there are all kinds of fringe benefits in terms of being submerged in water, lowers your blood pressure and stuff like that. But we're not here to get into that today, but there's all kinds of other side benefits, both psychologically as well as physically, to being submerged in water.
So I'm going to change gear a little bit. This is getting into more politics. So how has politics affected the promoting of every child a swimmer in Florida?
Well, I think the politicians that I've spoken to, and of course my general focus has been this program and this project of legislation, they're all for it. The poll, we did a poll 2 months ago in July, or 3 months ago, whatever it is, of 675 registered voters in the state of Florida. I was able to piggyback on a poll through a polling agency in Jacksonville that was not talking about, that was not the topic, but I was allowed to ask 2 questions. A, do you know how to swim? And B, do you believe that every child should learn to swim? And we had over 90% agree with the proposition that every child should learn to swim, which is actually shocking when you think about it. According to a fellow that helped me make this connection on the poll, his name is Dominic Calabro, and he's the head of an organization that our company belongs to called Florida Tax Watch. According to him, only 79% of the people in the United States believe that there's a God. So when he saw the results, that over 90% agreed to swim, he was astounded. And so he's now become a bit of a collaborator. Florida Tax Watch is not a lobbying organization in Tallahassee. It's a watchdog organization. And it works closely and cooperatively with some of the government people up there as a third party to study the impact of some of their spending programs. And they give the legislators involved feedback, which evidently those people, the government people, want to know the side effects of how they're spending the money that they're spending up there. And so it's a very well thought of an influential organization, but it doesn't lobby. So I can't get Mr. Calabro to be my political interface, but he believes in every child a swimmer, and so he's helping me on a sort of a side basis to make the connections that I need, because I have not been a political animal in my career beyond just representing the swimming pool industry.
So that's kind of a new venture for you there with this.
I love it.
With this
I love the adventure.
So this is still along the same route, but not political. It's more economical. So do you think economics affects the access that parents have to get affordable swim lessons for their children?
Well, I think our society has, we have economically disadvantaged groups at the bottom, and they get a lot of attention and a lot of government support. And then there's the middle class and the upper class. And I think in the middle and upper class, which is the main market for residential swimming pools, let's not forget that there's little more than 1 million, like 1.2 or 1.3 million residential swimming pools in the state of Florida. So that space is well developed, as it is in other states. It's not just Florida. Pretty much all the Sunbelt states have very vibrant residential swimming pool industries at the local level. And that's true even like in the northeastern part of the United States. We have operations in our company in the Northeast, and we sell a whole lot of swimming pool heat pumps and salt chlorine generators up there because there's a very vibrant residential swimming pool industry. The competition pools and what I would call the commercial pool segment, which that's where the aquatics people live, is a smaller number from a pure numbers standpoint. But wherever you go, there's always going to be, and this is global, our company has active customers in a little over 100 countries, our export division. And I've spent a significant amount of my life outside the United States working with our customers in all these different countries. And so it's the same everywhere in terms of the first world. And we're not talking about Central Africa here. We're talking about the first world part of the human race. And it's pretty much the same everywhere.
Yeah, from what I see, there's always very limited slots for affordable swim lessons offered in the local community. That I know locally where I live, it would be when our city pool was open, my husband would go down there at 5 a.m. in the morning and get in line, kind of like you're getting really hard rock concert tickets. They didn't open the gates for registration until 8 a.m. So you sit there for 3 hours just to get a slot for swim lessons for your child through the local city or county pool. So there's all the people that get there later that don't get a slot if they're all filled. So I think that...
Yeah, but Laura, if someone wants to have their children learn to swim, there's a will, and if there's a will, there's a way. There's lots of charitable organizations out there, which is really the best way to solve most of these problems anyway. I mean, I have a foundation, and I've been co-opting all of the funds raised for the trade association on Learn to Swim. There's always a way if someone has the will. We'll find a way to get them, if they really truly can't afford it. We'll find a way of making sure they get the swim lessons. And frankly, most swim schools that I've talked to, if they run into somebody that's truly economically in hardship, they'll give them a deal. I mean, again, most of the swim schools are all small businesses, under 10 employees. And just like our swimming pool industry, most 80% of our customers are 10 or less employees. So there's always a way. And then the swim schools, the people that I know in swim schools are way more focused on the spiritual mission of just teaching kids to swim, or not just kids, adults to swim as well. They're way more focused on that than they are economics. So if they run into a problem with economics, they'll solve it.
It's a wonderful industry, the aquatic industry overall, on both sides, the users and the suppliers and the owners. Everybody is always so wonderful in trying to, and it's been a mission of a lot of different organizations for the swim lessons and prevention of drowning. So I know you had mentioned scholarships earlier. Where could people find out about scholarships to help fund swim lessons for their child if they're needing to get swim lessons and they're economically having a hard time?
Well, you just have them contact you, since you're the sponsor of this podcast. And then you can contact me, and I'll tell you, depending on where they are geographically, I'm happy to help with sorting all that out.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Kent. And do you feel there's more closures of government-owned pools lately due to economics and budget cuts? Government has still been lagging behind the housing market crash. They never really came back completely from it, or at least seem to not, act like they have. So I know of 2 pools locally where it was a big deal about doing any repairs. We both know that, city-owned pools, county-owned pools, they don't make money. They spend more money on maintaining it than they do making money off of any programs that they have. So between the government and the residents, do you feel that this will affect swim lessons for our children in the state of Florida? Long term, no. Short term, of course, there's collateral damage to the lockdown that, and this is more political than not, but it's my opinion that the economic lockdown that the government has imposed on us, our citizenry,
has had more collateral damage than any flu could ever do. But we all have our opinions as citizens. I have been watching what's going on, and I've had some input from legislators who are running for re-election next week. And there will be a cutback. The state of Florida spends last year, $93 billion operating the state. And I think they're planning on a $3 billion cutback. If you think about it, that's only 3%. So it's not on a relative scale of things that big a deal. But there's always more demand for funding than there is funding, no matter what the tax base brings in. The state of Florida has a constitutional requirement of a balanced budget, which is a beautiful thing. And so there may be some tangential cutbacks on swimming pools. And of course, what you were talking about has more to do with local governments rather than state government. So, but I'm just not a supporter at all of what's happened as far as the lockdown is concerned. I think that was a huge mistake. But that's just my personal opinion on it. We'll all survive it. And whether or not it's looked on 5 years from now as the right strategy for managing what they call a pandemic, that'll be a different issue that'll be looked on. But I don't know what we can do about any of that. We just have to live through it. The pool industry, by the way, has boomed because of the lockdown and the pandemic.
Yes, it has. That's what I've heard everywhere. Everybody says they're so busy. There are actual shortages of equipment. Yeah. Believe it or not. Yes.
Our manufacturing business is operating at its absolute maximum capacity, as are the other major suppliers in the pool industry of all the even basic pool equipment like pumps and filters have been in shortages. And just the example that I had with a local pool I knew of with a local government, they actually had a city council meeting and lots of residents showed up wanting their local pool not to be closed. It was a pool that was built in the 1960s, been part of the community for a very long time. If they the city council was looking to close the pool and turn it into a skate park, because they said that the pool wasn't making money and was actually eating money out of their budget. So what and this is before COVID. So, and then there's another pool locally as well that it was closed for about 2.5 years. And the city did not want to spend the $550,000 to repair the pool. They finally sat down after citizens showed up to their city council meetings and said, we need the pool. It's the only pool in the city, which it's one of the largest cities in the top 10 in the state of Florida. So without having that pool, they lose the pool for their swim meets for high schools. So beyond COVID, when the city, and this is more local than it is state, how should cities look at that when it comes to swim lessons that are offered at these swimming pools for the local residents? And if those pools are closed to be turned into a skate park, there's not really that point of swim lessons. Now you have to find private swim lessons or, a local swim school if they have one in their community. How do you feel about that? Well, I think what you're struggling with is how the elected officials view their priorities and the scope of government. In other words, should the local governments really be in the business of providing a swimming pool? You'd have to go back and sort of reprioritize, well, what is the function of government? Certainly, if swimming is a basic life skill, for those that don't have private pools to learn to swim in and to swim in regularly, having a community pool, to me, is not a stretch at all. It's a priority that should be provided. If they provide skateboard parks, well, how many people are going to ever die if they don't know how to skateboard? None. How many people are going to die if they don't know how to swim? A significant number. So if you want to eat the topic, but in the end, I believe that I'd be able to win that debate versus other sports or providing facilities for basketball or whatever else it is that the city officials have in mind. Are there more important basic government functions? Yeah, sure. The sewer system and the traffic system and the police, because we don't have a civilization without law and order. And so all of those are primary functions of government. But when you get beyond the primary functions of government, I think that having community pools where someone can learn to swim if they don't have a backyard pool, and not only can learn, because once you learn, you want to continue on it because it's such a happy, healthy, fun type of sport, let's call it at that point.
I think we just connected the dots pretty well with our episode so far right there. And then what do you
I think we're on the same page, that's for sure.
Yes, we are. So what do you think the future looks like in Florida regarding your initiative towards Every Child a Swimmer?
Well, I live in hope. And because I've had little baby steps of progress, I think it's going to happen. I honestly think, because first of all, anything that costs money will be scrutinized heavily for the 2021 legislature post-election. But this proposal doesn't cost the government a dime. And so right away, that's good. And then when you look at a poll that says 90% of the people agree that every child should learn to swim, and all we're doing is putting the topic on the radar for the parents of people going into kindergarten. While it's not the ideal solution, it's a step in that direction because, again, from a practical standpoint, the school systems are a quagmire of politics and money. And we know that we're never going to get legislation that requires that the school system teach every child to swim. So if that's an impossible task, let's just focus on what is possible. And what is possible is having the parents questioned about, did you teach your child to swim when you're in a kindergarten? That's the first gate in terms of the educational system that's required.
I think that would be awesome. So is there any final words that you have for our audience on this episode?
Final words. No, I think we've covered it all. Let's just agree that it's a happy, healthy thing that we provide for the people who get into the pools. And I know personally I'm inspired by it every day. The reality of our business is way different than that. We're helping our customers who are pool contractors of one sort or another. They're either pool builders or service or renovation or retail stores, whatever. But at the same time, what really is compelling is the ultimate result that all of us collectively do, and that's provide a happy, safe environment for people to enjoy their lives.
Well, thank you very much for being on our episode today, Dr. Kent. And it's been wonderful talking with you today. And you have a healthy rest of your day.
And you too, Lauren. I'm very grateful to provide my thoughts.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for diving in today with the Let's Talk About Pools podcast. Be sure to follow us on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. And feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts so more aquatic professionals like you can learn about the show. We appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Let's Talk About Pools podcast.